As Hermione walked home, the thought occurred to her that perhaps she shouldn't have left Ellen alone with a person they knew so little about. But crossing the main road to join the Crescent, she dismissed this as absurd. Jojo may have tried earlier to come across as bolshy and streetwise, but there was a naivety, an overall honesty to her bearing that gave one no reason to suspect her capable of taking an axe to her Good Samaritan and making off with the family silver and credit cards. Much good it would do the girl anyway, for Hermione knew better than anyone how hard up Ellen was these days. Her dried flower business was still in the early stages of getting off the ground, and Hermione suspected that it would be a while before Ellen's financial position improved dramatically. She was now halfway along the Crescent, a road that bore no resemblance to the shape suggested by its name, but which was a quiet through road and home to some of the largest and most interesting houses in Cransford. Most of the properties had been built at the turn of the century for the wealthy local industrialists of the era, but nearer the main road, where Hermione was now walking, stood a few recent additions. Built to individual designs and constructed of Cheshire brick, the modern properties blended in with their surroundings pleasantly enough, and in Hermione's opinion, they deserved nothing like the outrage that had greeted their arrival from some of the more conservative-minded inhabitants of the Crescent. She slowed her step as she drew level with one of the newer homes on her right. Orchard House. She stood still and cursed Roger under her breath. Ellen and Roger had moved into Orchard House a month after the builders had moved out. Hermione had seen the removal van arrive late in the afternoon when she'd been on her way back from Cransford. In those days, she had thought nothing of walking into town for her shopping, but recently her legs and back had started to object, and she now used the local bus service, or relied upon Ellen's generosity to drive her to the shops, which was how she'd got to know Ellen. It had been raining one morning when Hermione had set off with her basket and umbrella, and as she'd come to the end of the Crescent, a small red car had pulled up alongside her. An attractive, fair-haired woman had wound down her window and asked Hermione if she wanted a lift into Cransford. "I'm still finding my way around," she'd said, as Hermione had climbed into the passenger seat. "So shout if you think I'm going the wrong way." They had taken to each other instantly, and had quickly settled into a comfortable routine of tea and cake, while listening to the afternoon short story on the radio in Ellen's luxuriously fitted kitchen. Afterwards, they would give their verdict on the writer's talent, or lack of it, until it was time for Ellen to start thinking about feeding the men in her life, Simon and Roger. Simon was the kind of son for whom any mother would willingly suffer. Tall, fair, well-mannered and heartbreakingly good-looking, he was also the kind of boy for whom most girls would willingly suffer. Hermione was sure that Simon's father absconding to France just as he was about to sit his A-levels had upset him more than he would admit, but, all credit to the lad, he'd not only kept his head and sailed through his exams, but had been there for his mother in moments of crisis. For one so young, he was particularly clear-sighted and self-possessed, but with none of the arrogance usually associated with these qualities. It was hard to imagine how any father could have turned his back on such a delightful son. Hermione was not by nature a vindictive person, but she felt sure that she would never forgive Roger for what he had put Ellen and Simon through, or for the disruption to her own life. She missed Ellen, now that she worked full-time and lived just that little bit further away. Ellen usually had only one day off a week, Thursday, and it wasn't enough for Hermione. She wanted things how they used to be when she'd had Ellen all to herself. Damn Roger. He'd spoiled everything, and damn him for making her realise what a selfish person she was becoming in her old age. She moved along the road until she came to the lodge, set back some 30 or so yards.